Bene, riprendiamo I nostri lavori.
Very well. We can start with the afternoon session of our third Humans Congress. The first two congresses took place in Warsaw and Danzig. And this third Congress is taking place today, our Congress. That will end with some formalities this afternoon, and then tomorrow and the day after tomorrow we'll have our Citizens' Assembly open to everybody with citation-based citizens who are going to discuss how democracy, European democracy, can be strengthened. This afternoon session is titled the movement, Humans Movement for European Citizens Initiatives. Of course, we do not refer to any initiative, but we're talking about our method. We're going to discuss how we can activate some initiatives, how we can support them, and how we can reform some things in the European Union. Our methodology is based on the idea of direct participation for citizens through European citizenship initiatives. We'll discuss three topics and three main ECIs, initiatives which are not only launched by humans, but these initiatives are supported by humans. Before talking about these three ECIs, my choice, my voice on abortion, psychedelic care on psychedelic-assisted treatments, then stop cruelty, stop slaughter on intensive farming. So before we talk about the initiatives, it is important to introduce them by discussing the tool of European citizens' initiatives, referring to democratic participation in Europe, and this will be the topic that we'll discuss tomorrow and the day after tomorrow at Brussels University. And the introductory speech will be delivered by Paul Blocker.
I'm thanking Humans and all the organizers for having me here. It's a very difficult task, I think, to be discussing something like democratic deepening, democratic reform in the current circumstances. That's for a whole bunch of reasons. One of the reasons is clearly, as we've also been alluding to this morning, that one of the pillars of Western liberal representative democracy is collapsing as we speak, the United States. But thinking about that particular case of, let's say, a democratic backsliding, or perhaps even democratic implosion in broad daylight, it makes me also think about how actually, as I think we said a number of times this morning already, how extremely important it is that we actually sort of take a leap forward, that we defend democracy, that we speak out, that we make, that we show to the powers that be that actually ordinary citizens want democracy. They don't want dark dictatorships like the one that Trump is creating at this very moment. And so we have to accept a little bit, I think, this cognitive dissonance of a kind of democratic ideal in the clouds and a very complex reality of democratic challenges on the ground. And if we lift this up to the European Union's level, it becomes even more complex, I think. I mean, we know the type of instruments we have as citizens and also in some cases of non-citizens of the European Union to be democratic involved with the European institutions. There's the elections. We had them last year. I mean, many of us were also very much active in terms of mobilizing people to come out and vote, etc. This is not the place maybe to still reflect on the outcome of the elections, but there's lots to be discussed there, also in terms of challenges for democracy. We have a number of other instruments as citizens of the EU, like petitioning the Parliament. We discussed this morning. You can send a complaint to the Ombudsman. You can call for access and openness of information. And then next to that, we have this unique instrument called the European Citizens' Initiative, which is unique in many ways. Maybe not the least important part is that it's a transnational one, so it means you need to mobilize people across constituencies, across borders, across countries. But here also I feel in great difficulty in the sense that my message wants to be two things today, and you could say it's a kind of performative contradiction, what I'm going to say. That is, on the one hand, the European Citizens' Initiative is largely a very weak instrument with very little impact. We could put it in a category of a kind of simulacrum, or to put it in more Anglo-Saxon terms, citizens washing. So we fake that there's participation going on, but in reality that's not really the case. So that's one message I want to address. But at the same time, I would also want to make a very different message. That is, the ECI needs to be a stepping stone, an instrument that exists and hence from which we can depart to actually very importantly not only defend democracy, which is on the cards nowadays, but also indeed try to deepen it. And that also explains a little bit maybe my argument we have with Eumans and another organization called Citizens Take Over Europe, which is a transnational European coalition of civil society organizations. We have also already some time ago started thinking about drafting an ECI on democracy as such. That is, an ECI that says, okay, we have an ECI, but the ECI needs to become much stronger, which is another kind of performative contradiction, because you can't really actually do that if you want to do that seriously. The main argument then is we have ECI, it might be very weak. There have been in the 12, 13 years that it exists, 10 ECIs that actually made it in terms of a successful outcome, meaning having gathered 1 million or more signatures from people from at least 7 countries in the EU. But if we look at it, and some recent scholarly work on this also shows that, if you look at the real outcome, to what extent have these ECIs then created legislative impact, etc., I think the overwhelming consensus is that there's very little impact. And so that brings me, in a way, back to my starting point. Maybe ECIs are weak, but at the same time, we should use them as much as we can to try to make the situation better, to address this famous democratic deficit, the lack of possibility for European citizens to actually engage with European Union institutions. And so what I'm going to say now is a bit part of our sort of work in progress, where we start thinking about, okay, we have the ECI, what is then wrong with it? How could we try to make it better? As I said, many perceive it as a problematic instrument. There has been surveys and interviews also with people who have been organizing successful ECIs, and they themselves acknowledge that they think that the outcome is less than what they hoped the outcome would have been. And so if you look at ECIs, you could sort of carve them up in 3 stages. There's the initiation. You get an idea, you want to get it off the ground. There's then a second part where you hopefully actually get the Commission, because that's the institution you address with an ECI. You get them to register your idea, and you have to start gathering the signatures, which is the main part, right? If you have 1 million signatures, that means you cross the hurdle to have the Commission listen to you. If you think about it, there's something rather crazy about it. And then you get the third part, which is maybe the most interesting one, where you say, okay, I've been doing all this kind of stuff, And now I want to see an actual result. So I talked to the institutions, in this case the Commission. I stood up to them as a kind of David to Goliath, and now I want them to respond. And so if you look at these 3 stages, well, if you start with the initiation phase, the starting up, you have your idea, there it's already daunting. I mean, it's extremely difficult as a singular individual, as a citizen with little or no knowledge of how do you address the institutions, how do you create a proposal for a citizens' initiative that might become registered, etc. You have already major problems. The ECI, the way it is set up in itself, is problematic in that sense because it asks you literally to identify a proposal for a kind of legal act that the European Commission then can, in one way or the other, start implementing. In reality, and it explicitly says by implementing the treaties. And that sounds all very technical, but the problem, one of the problems is, for instance, if you want to set up a citizens' initiative to ameliorate democracy, you can't ask very big steps because it needs to be within the existing treaties, within the status quo. You can't ask them to change the treaties. That's not accepted, and it has already been also confirmed by the European Court of Justice. So in the initiation phase, you already are in a difficult moment. You have to have sufficient knowledge to be able to identify something that the Commission then might accept. If you get registered, then you have to start within 6 months your signature gathering, where you have only 12 months, and you need to reach out to many, many, many people to get them actually to sign your initiative. Well, anyone who has organized even small events knows that it's very difficult to get people to sign, to come to your event, etc. So de facto, that most of the times means that you have to have a huge organization behind you. Non-governmental organizations, civic society associations, hopefully the media at a certain stage, to get your message out there, to get people actually to sign up. There are also more technical issues with the Commission now only since 2023 allows you to use their online register system, which according to many experts is a step back, makes it more difficult for smaller organizations to do their own sort of mobilization and gathering of signatures. And there's also the broader question that anyone knows working in democratic democracy participation, that is getting out there in the broader picture as such. You have to, in one way or the other, be capable of using all those instruments out there, potentially nowadays TikTok and that kind of stuff, because otherwise nobody sees you. And so your initiative remains a very tiny, non-noticed issue if you don't manage to involve the wider public. Getting to the follow-up stage then, what is currently indeed, I think, extremely problematic is indeed that ordinary citizens are not allowed to say, we think that the treaties, we now have 11.4, Article 11.4 in the Treaty on the European Union saying there's a European Citizens Initiative. We also want an 11.5 that says there's going to be a European referendum or so. You can't say that because the Commission will not allow you to do that, and it says it doesn't have any competence in treaty change. But so that restricts you very much, like us in Eumans, to propose more blunt proposals of how to really deepen democracy. There's also another dimension, and I think it's related, where you could think of follow-up, not only where the Commission within a couple of months needs to react to a successful ECI, but where there is a much broader debate possible. You could think, for instance, you have a number of citizens' initiatives now on the environment in different ways, like Stop Glyphosate and others, Save the Bees and others. Why not have an instrument added to a citizens' initiative, a citizens' assembly, on a number of successful ECIs that discusses those ECIs and then proposes a proposal to the European Parliament, where it becomes something much more robust. You have much more time and possibility to make your ideas public, etc. And so there's much to discuss there on how to reform the ECI itself. But let me stop here and just wait for these wonderful initiatives that will be presented in a second to inform us how does this actually work in practice.
Grazie, Paul. Grazie, Paul Blocker.
Thank you, Paul Blocker. Let's not forget that we also need to speak about money, especially to those who say citizens are not really interested in participating. Well, let's ask, how much money does the European Union and do the member states and the provinces and the regions spend for representational democracy? We're here, and all of what we see is billions of euros that are spent, public money that is spent every year for for representational democracy, while almost nothing is spent on direct democracy. Let's think of the amount of money that is spent on elections, including local elections, while very little is spent on spreading information on European citizens' initiatives. And the European citizenship initiatives pay for their own information campaigns. So if we want to integrate civic participation and to complement representative democracy with direct democracy, we should bear in mind that this has a cost. I used to be a member of the European Parliament, but there is someone who is now a member of Parliament. With Valentina Palmisano, he made it possible for us to be here this afternoon, and we'd like to thank him for playing host to our meeting. So Mario Furore has the floor, and after what he says, we'll be discussing the 3 European citizenship initiatives that are on the agenda today, starting with My Voice, My Choice. Well, thank you for coming here. It's an honor for me to play host to you here at the European Parliament, and I'm very happy to be sitting next to Marco Cappato, whom I admire and esteem. I think that many fights that we are in the front lines of, such as campaigns for safe abortion, for end-of-life decisions, and also fights about climate change, all of these are goals that we should strive to reach together. And we should also try and make an approach to direct democracy easier for citizens. This is my second term here in Europe. In my previous term, I was a member of the Petition Committee, and that's a body that is very important for direct democracy, because the committee can approve of petitions concerning violations of European rights reported by the petitioners. The petitioners submit a petition, and the committee encourages the European institutions to deal with the issues such as air quality, consumer rights. We have received petitions about many different topics, and I took part in the End the Cage Age petition that was rather successful. They collected many signatures, despite the media advertisement that this campaign received. there was a need for a more massive communication campaigns. Very often mainstream media do not help us promote issues such as in the case of the End the Cage Age initiative. All the animal industry lobbies were against us. I think a lot still has to be done. A lot can be improved because nowadays, even if you collect 1 million signatures, the European Commission is still not obligated to deal with the issues. Petitions are even more important. So what we should be working on is a tool to make it mandatory for the European Commission to deal with issues that are submitted through an European citizens' initiatives. I also believe the number of signatures required to submit an ECI should be lowered. What can Europe do for citizens? A lot of money is being invested in things that have no return or that make citizens distrustful of European institutions. And this is proven by or shown by abstention rates when there are European elections, when European elections are held. This is the result of the fact that citizens feel they have no impact on what is being done in Europe. But in order to change the course of direct democracy, in order to make it more visible to citizens that there is an instrument allowing them to collect signatures in order to have their voices heard, that is very important. In addition to directive democracy, representative democracy is now being under attack. If you think that during the next plenary sessions, Ursula von der Leyen would like to approve a rearmament plan that hasn't even been discussed with the European Parliament, I'm not even interested in discussing whether this is right or wrong now, but the very fact that there is no debate, that no debate is being scheduled on rearmament, that's important. We used to be the largest directly elected democratic assembly after India, the second largest after India. But a lot of work still has to be done. My party has launched a movement among young people. We are now filming a video where we interview young people, asking them what they know about European institutions, and we are inviting 100 of them, the best videos, to come to Brussels and see how it works. And by cooperating among each other and with your associations, I think we can do something very useful, especially on those topics that are of interest to several parties. Because, of course, if each one keeps looking just at their own small territory, not much can be done. Now I'd like to invite Paul Blocker to go back to his seat, and there'll be time to discuss with him later and tomorrow. And now I'd like to call the speakers of the next session, in particular Tina Thompson, who's going to talk about the My Voice, My Choice ECI. Thank you. And Tina is going to chair the next session. The other speakers are Isabel Stabile, a gynecologist and professor at University of Malta, And then we also have Laura Convertino and Giulia Mazzina. And with them, in addition to abortion, we'll be talking about the right to science and the right to enjoy the benefits of scientific research. The European Parliament is very keen on recycling. And as you might see, Laura Convertino's name sheet was used for Emmanuel Macron on the back, on the reserve, or vice versa. And there is one for Giulia. Tina Tomsic, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Please tell us something about the My Voice, My Choice initiative.
Sorry, I was just waiting for the translator. So I'm super excited to be here and that I can tell you a bit more about our initiative called My Voice, My Choice. The idea for this initiative actually started a couple of years ago when Roe v. Wade was overturned in the USA. The coordinator of the whole campaign, Nika, she was living in the States at the time, and she was greatly shocked that rights that American women believed were granted to them, that were written in the Constitution, could be taken from them overnight. And that was the moment when she, together with our Slovenian organization called Institute 8 of March, we started thinking very hard what we can do on the level of the whole Europe to protect abortion rights, because we know that even though we have abortion written in the Constitution in Slovenia as well, even though a lot of European countries have the right well protected, there's always a chance that there comes a regression of those rights. There are countries where abortion is not accessible, and that's why we really, really wanted to do something. The thing is that our organization is very well organized inside Slovenia, so we have experience with citizens' initiatives in Slovenia. We changed about 17 laws in the last couple of years. We went to national referendums, and we did the largest Go Out and Vote campaign in the history of Slovenia. But we never thought that we would create a campaign on a European level. So we had zero experience going into a European Citizens Initiative campaign. Even more, we didn't even know that this mechanism exists and that it's one of the only mechanisms of direct democracy in the European Union. So when we discovered the ECI as a mechanism, we started to think very hard, what can we do with the ECI, how to even form the proposal so that it's in the competences of the European Commission. When it comes to abortion, it's really hard because it's under health competences, which means that the Commission is very limited when it comes to changing any legislation regarding abortion. And everybody said to us that we were crazy, that there's nothing that we can do, that we won't succeed, that it's something that nobody else will want to do together with us. But we still went into this very hopeful and with the idea in mind. We got together an international group of lawyers which helped us frame the proposition that we are currently still collecting the signatures for. And about a year ago, we got registered as an ECI and started collecting the signatures in April. In that year, we managed to create a pan-European feminist movement. We started with a couple of organizations from the 7 countries which are needed in order to register an initiative, and then we just grew. We got together a network of over 300 organizations in a month and a half. So before the European elections last year, we managed to collect 500,000 of signatures, which is it's the fastest growing initiative that got to 500,000. And then after a short summer break, we continued with our campaign on a more more on a ground level and also with a bit more of a grassroots approach. And we created a huge community of volunteers which helped us collect the signatures on the ground in almost all member countries. And we are continuing with the activities now. We managed to collect 1 million signatures by the end of the year. So we already have the 1 million that's needed. We are right now collecting a couple more signatures, so we are trying to get to 200,000 more signatures so that we are on the safe side because of any margin of error that can happen when signing. And on Saturday, it's March 8th, we are preparing many activities in the field. We are preparing a huge online action. We will have more than 70 events happening in all member states, or I'm sorry, in 20 member states. And we have more than 1,500 volunteers throughout the European Union helping us get those signatures. The truth is that this journey hasn't been easy. It's basically the hardest thing that we ever did, but we believe that we have to stick with our values, which are that abortion should be a right that everybody in Europe should have the right to get a safe abortion. Unfortunately, in Malta and in Poland, abortion is still illegal. Isabella will probably tell a bit more about Malta, so I will leave that open. But even though we know that those are the only countries where abortion is very strictly limited by law, there's also a problem of access to abortion, whether it's financial, whether it's because of conscious objections. In Italy, I know that the rate of conscious objections is very high, that there are many obstacles in order to get an abortion. In Croatia, there's a similar situation where women go to Slovenia in order to get an abortion if they can afford it. Or even in countries like Austria and Germany, abortion is not free. It's not covered by the general insurance, and therefore women have to pay hundreds of euros in order to get the procedure. And what we are proposing with our initiative is basically to establish a financial mechanism, and that was the only way that our initiative could be registered with the Commission, that would cover the cost of abortion for anyone in that country, so who lives in the country, who had to travel from another country, as women from Poland and Malta are already doing, and then paying for the procedures out of pocket. And it would also cover the cost of abortion for women who can't afford it because they have to pay for it out of pocket in their own country. And that's why we are proposing this solution. It's a way of progressing the right that's already granted in many of the countries. And it would grant abortion access to anyone who needs it, who has to travel in order to get an abortion. It has opened a debate on the European level when it comes to that fundamental right. I will end here and give the word to others.
Grazie Tina per questa presentazione, è stato ricordato.
Thank you, Tina, for your presentation. This was discussed in the morning. We'd like to thank Matteo Cadeddu and Alice Spaccini. Matteo was the coordinator and Alice coordinated the signature collection. And I think that in Italy the result achieved was very positive. But we will keep on collecting signatures. And as Paul told us, there's a follow-up. After collecting signatures, you have to create a whole movement. Malta was mentioned. Now we have Isabel Stabile, gynecologist and professor at the Malta University.
Oh, it is! Oh, wonderful. So let me first of all say thank you to the organizers. And of course, I'm here representing Doctors for Choice. I'm here with my colleague, her two daughters, Rebecca and Nicola, and their best friend, Gloria. We welcome the younger citizens of the European Union. Thank you. I also wish to thank my colleagues here from My Voice by Choice, because if it hadn't been for them, I think we would still be way behind in our movement towards changing the regulations for abortion in Malta. So as you can see, yes, abortion is a fact of life in modern Malta. Let me just remind you, we are the southernmost. You can just keep going with the PowerPoint. Do I press any buttons here, or will it just happen?
Just happen.
It just happens.
Magic.
Keep going, keep going. Thank you. So we are the smallest and southernmost European Union nation state. We are an island state. We have a population of about 500,000, just over. So our abortion rate is very similar, really, to that of the rest of the European Union. Obviously, the numbers are very, shall we say, unreliable, because they are based on the number of people who order abortion pills from the two main providers that thankfully exist. Women Help Women and Women on Web. And we thank those providers for saving the lives of many, many women. Thank you. Keep going. So, just to give you an idea, you're looking here at the number of abortion pills that were ordered by women who live in Malta. And as you can see, the numbers have shot up primarily since COVID. But you can also see that the increase year on year is of the order of 10 to 15%. There's been a doubling in numbers since 2020. The numbers are going up, and they're going up, of course, because there is availability of pills and because there is a need for abortion pills that is finally being met by these providers. Thank you. So, yeah, a total of about 2,500. That's quite a few. So Malta's criminal code is really one of the most extreme in Europe. I know that our colleagues in Poland have a problem, of course, but their problem is that they went backwards. We haven't gone forwards. Our problem is that for the last 200 years, women who are found guilty of having an abortion face a maximum of 3 years in prison. Doctors like myself who assist in this process would face a criminal consequence of 4 years in prison and, unfortunately, the loss of our license, which is really a very, very big deterrent. Can I move on, please? So this leads me to what happened a couple of years ago. A couple called Andrea Prudente with her husband arrived in Malta for what they called a baby moon. They were happy to be pregnant. Unfortunately, that pregnancy was complicated. She started to bleed, she lost all the amniotic fluid, and clearly sought the help of our medical professions, who admitted her to hospital, found that the fetal heart was still present, and said, "Sorry, madam, you need to wait here until this baby dies." She and her husband were obviously very unhappy with this. They reached out to us as Doctors for Choice, and through a number of connections with the insurance companies, they finally managed to ship her out to Spain, where she had a legal abortion. Now, the story ended well for her, and in a way it ended well for us too, because as a result of this episode, a number of doctors, 135 of us actually, got together and wrote a judicial protest. We said, no, this is not acceptable. We cannot have women facing death, being shipped out to another country to save their lives. So this prompted the state attorney to look at the existing law and see if it could be changed. Moving on, please. And this led to what is now called the legal grounds for abortion, which are now possible in Malta, but under very, very restricted conditions. Bill 28 is, in fact, a step back for us. Many people think, oh, yes, now we don't have a total ban. We have a partial ban. But actually, this partial ban is almost worse than the total ban we had before. And I will explain why. First of all, you can only have a legal abortion in Malta if you are literally on deathbed. If you're about to die, you will be possibly given an abortion, move on, provided the fetus has not reached viability. So that's the first condition. The second, please, moving on. The second possibility, the second legal grounds, if your health is at grave jeopardy, which may lead to death. Now, this sounds like a wider possibility. Now, it sounds like we might be able to have an abortion under more, shall we say, liberal circumstances. But again, there are some very strict limitations. One of them being that the fetus has not reached viability, because if it has, we will deliver it. Secondly, we need to have this, shall we say, intervention confirmed and approved by 3 specialists. And of course, these 3 specialists need to be registered with the medical council. So we can't have, 3 doctors flying in from abroad and having it done. So the restrictions are extremely high. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, in spite of this, we now know that 8 women had their lives saved since this bill was passed. Actually, these data are not completely up to date. They're a few months old. But yes, 8 women had a legal abortion on the island, unlike the other almost 600 women who had an illegal abortion on the island. Moving on, please. Thank you. So, yes, we believe that Malta's abortion law is the most inhumane in Europe. There are no other exceptions. So, risk of harm to health, for example, if you have cancer of the breast, and you need irradiation or you need chemotherapy, they will give you a lower form of treatment or an inferior form of treatment until your fetus is viable. Then they will deliver the fetus and they will continue the treatment after that. If you have a severe fetal malformation, again, you are not going to have an abortion in Malta. Or if you are, unfortunately, the victim of rape or incest. Moving on, please. So, I'd like to make a point here. The law as it currently stands, which is a terrible law, is in fact not a deterrent. Because, as you can see, almost 2,500 women have actually ordered abortion pills and had an illegal abortion. So the current law is not stopping women from having abortions. All it's doing is stopping them from having an abortion that is safe. It is stopping them from being able to reach and achieve help when they need it. And although it is true to say that nobody's gone to prison so far, we do have a number of women who've gone through the court system, and a couple in the very recent past, one of whom is still being prosecuted as we speak. Thank you. So, yes, we have no providers of abortion services because, as I said, the only options we have are either to have an illegal abortion on your own or to travel to another country. And if you are to travel to another country, you'll see from those numbers there that the numbers are falling dramatically. And, of course, this is because it is now possible to have medical abortions on the island, albeit illegally. So, we, as Doctors for Choice, one of the approaches that we took a couple of years back is to see if we can provide options to these women by providing information. Because, again, it's all very well to have the information at your fingertips, but if you don't know what is available, how to achieve it, and how to achieve it safely, then you can run into trouble. So we now provide, if I could move on to the next slide. Thank you. We now provide a website where a number of questions are answered. And in fact, we find that our website is being used quite extensively by people outside Malta, especially, by the way, in the Ukraine and Poland, and not surprisingly, perhaps also the United States. These are some of the questions that we find ourselves answering, and I won't read through them, but they're the obvious questions that anyone who's facing an illegal abortion would be asking. Can I have the next slide, please? So yes, my colleague and I set up the abortion doula support service a couple of years ago. And yes, we provide a free service. It's a helpline. So we basically receive calls on our telephone, primarily from women who are either seeking information before an abortion, seeking information and support during an abortion. Perhaps they're bleeding heavily, perhaps they are in a lot of pain and they're not really sure whether this is normal or not. Either way, they might also call us after the abortion to say, I'm not really sure what to do. Is it over? Do I come and see a doctor? And if I do, what do I say? As you can see here, we receive approximately 1 to 2 calls every single day, which of course makes sense when you think that 600 women had an abortion last year. Now, you might be wondering, what do people in Malta think about all this? Well, here is a survey that was conducted a few years back of Maltese doctors. Okay, we surveyed about 454 Maltese doctors and said, how many of you agree with abortion and under what circumstances? So I'll have you take a look and see that, okay, the majority, 63%, were happy to agree with abortion provided the life was in danger, and hence Bill 28 met their needs. And approximately the same amount said, yes, well, if there's a non-viable fetal anomaly, we agree with abortion. Yet, I remind you, this is illegal. If there's rape or incest, about a third of them said, yes, we agree with abortion. Again, it's still illegal. Preserving a woman's physical or emotional health. Again, about a third of doctors think that that is reasonable, but it's still illegal. And as you can see, the numbers go down. So if you say, how many of you agree with abortion under any circumstances, then of course that is a relatively small number. Could I have the next slide, please? So we then decided to find out how much information do they really have? How much do they know? This is my peers, okay? I am rather embarrassed to show you these numbers, but I will do so. So, how many of you, and this is a smaller survey, 173 people, doctors again, so is it true that accessing abortion services abroad can be criminally prosecuted in Malta? And the correct answer to that is no. And yet, almost 60% thought that was true. So they have wrong information. Is it true, by the way, that providing information about abortion is illegal? Yes, yes, it is. A third of them think it is. It is not. Otherwise, I would be in jail, because I do it every day. Is it true that legalizing abortion in Malta will increase the number of abortions of women seeking abortions? A third of them think it's true. Well, as you well know, there's data from many countries to show that that is not true. I'll have the next slide, and I am almost done. So what about public opinion? Because after all, if we have to change this, we have to change it from the bottom up, and we know that our politicians will only vote if, will only change the law if they know that they're going to be re-elected. Politicians are the same everywhere in the world. Well, if we look at, if we survey people, now this is stratified randomized sampling of the population. How many of you agree with decriminalizing abortion? And you can see there's a change here. I'm showing you two columns, 2021 and 2022, just to show you the difference. But if you look at the right-hand column, which is probably the most recent data we have, you can see that the vast majority of people under the age of 25 agree with the decriminalization of abortion, and that those numbers drop significantly as we survey older and older persons. Nevertheless, there is a cohort, 35, 36% of people over the age of 65, like me, who actually agree with the decriminalization of abortion. So public opinion is not against this change. Can we have the next slide, please? So I can also like to show you some data that we published quite recently, last year, with my colleagues at the University of Malta, regarding who is having an abortion in Malta. Who are they? Who are these people? Well, the mean age is 29.3, okay? More than half are already mothers, and they have a mean number of 1.7 children. So these are people who have completed their families, for mostly. A quarter of them already have 2 or more children, so you can understand how that would be. 2/3 of them say that they were not using contraception, which is another reason why Doctors for Choice is advocating also for the availability of contraception and sex education in schools. A third of them said that contraception failed. Now, I'm a gynecologist, and I can assure you contraception does not fail in 1/3 of patients, okay, in 1/3 of women. It fails if your primary mode of contraception is the withdrawal method, which is what's happening here. And 2/3 of them said they couldn't possibly have another child at this point in their life. And about a third said they had no money to raise another child. So you can see that this is representative of women having abortions pretty much all over Europe. Have the next slide, please. Thank you. So my last slide really here is, shall we say, a reach out to my colleagues in in the European Union. My colleagues, we need to remember that last year the European Parliament actually voted in favour of a resolution to enshrine the right of abortion into the Charter. Now, our Maltese MEPs, and I know there are 6 of them, I'm sure none of them are in this room right now, our Maltese MEPs will tell you that because Malta has a derogation against abortion, they cannot discuss it. Well, this is not true, because as we all know, all MEPs represent all Europeans. And this is important. This is why we have My Voice, My Choice. This is why we can have conversations about ECIs. So let us please, moving forward, try to encourage our MEPs to think and put pressure on the Maltese government to decriminalise abortion for all people who live in Malta. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel Stabile, for explaining very clearly what's the very practical use of an ECI if the Commission follows up with a positive solution. And we thank her daughter and her family for being here. And I'll now give the floor to Laura Convertino, who's the president of Science for Democracy. Laura, you have the floor.
I'll try my best to be clear. So thank you so much for the invite. I'm really humbled to be here today. I'm incredibly embarrassed to follow such wonderful interventions at the moment because I feel tiny. I'm a medical doctor myself, although I'm not a gynecologist. I'm a neuropsychiatrist. I'm based in London, and I'm the president of Science for Democracy. Science for Democracy was born in 2018 in this very building. Thanks to Marco Cappato, Marco Perduca, Nicolò Figa-Talamanca, who talked this morning, and other scientists and activists based all over the world, really. The purpose of Science for Democracy has always been to promote the right to science. And I'm aware that probably most of you here know what the right to science is, but I don't take it for granted, so I'm just going to refresh the memory briefly. The human right to science is the human right for people to produce science, contribute to the advance of science, access scientific knowledge, and access the produce, the output of science. So if you can think about it for a second, it's actually quite broad. It covers a lot of stuff. It goes from access to education to access to health and anything that is in between that. And on top of it, of course, there is the aspect of the right to scientists to be free to do their research and to be supported to do so. Of course, I cannot stress enough, and I think, again, I don't have to explain you anything, but at the moment, there is a bit of a war against science, I would say. There's a bit of fear of science around the world, and I don't think this is random. I don't think this is out of nowhere. Science, I'm afraid, to contradict many of my colleagues, science is per se incredibly political, and it has always been and will always be, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. So how is the right to science of any use to what we are discussing right now? Why is the right to science meaningful? How does that relate to what we are talking about? And it sounds a bit blurry, a bit, out in the air compared to these wonderful initiatives that have been presented so far. If you think about it for a second, any aspect of the right to science really closely relates to the right to abortion and the right to have access to reproductive rights for women. I found an interesting editorial that was published in Nature in 2024, October, so relatively recently, when they just looked at how much money goes into science research related to female health. So only the 5% globally of the research and development funding for science is devoted to female health. Of this 4%, so 4 out of 5%, is related to cancer research. And of the remaining 1%, 25% goes for fertility research. So the tiny part left to it is split across a number of things. For the doctors in the room, of course, we know that there are certain conditions that beyond reproductive rights affect women more than men, such as autoimmunity, for instance. And of this part, even more tiny proportion is left to study ways for women to have control over their bodies and to have safe abortions and to have safe contraception. Of course, we have methods, but we can do better. Another aspect of this, again, it doesn't come out of nowhere. Science is not unrelated to society. It's not unrelated to political choices. It's not unrelated to what's happening around us. If you think about it for a second, it's quite recent. Like the history of female scientists is quite recent. The history of female researchers and female doctors being allowed in the room to make decisions about where the science should go, where the money should go into the science, what science should we do, what topics should we cover when we do our research, is incredibly recent. And if women, female people, non-binary people, like if we're not diverse in the way in which we think about science, in the way in which we do science, science will always have incredibly disarming biases that we will never really be able to move forward from. Something that Julia is, works with me in Science for Democracy, I'll leave her the word in a second, but something that she reminded me today is that in the recent turns of events in the US, probably you all know the war against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion happening in the US right now. One of the key words, like the flag words, that they have to be looked after as a sign of, these dark arts of DEI happening in any form of proposal or funding opportunities. One of the key words is actually woman or female. Of course, there is not men or male, but apparently, inherently, if we talk about female or women, the topic, whatever it is, has to be political, and has to be in some way nasty or difficult to talk about. And in this case specifically, of course, this means no funding is going to go into research for that, and no people are going to be paid to study this stuff, which is horrendous. Another thing that I want to just put your attention on, again, a third aspect of the right to science, which is incredibly relevant for abortion rights and female reproductive rights. Of course, as the people who talked before me said much better than I could ever do, access to abortion rights, access to safe way to get an abortion, access to the knowledge about our own bodies, access to safe contraception, access to knowledge about contraception, all these things are inherently related to the right to science. The right to science of half of the population is being blocked. We are not aware of it. I don't think many people are even aware what the right to science is, but it's a tool that we can use, and then you're just going to tell you a bit better how we can use it to fight these things and to keep into our minds that, we can do something about it, and there are really things that can be done to make things better. Just as a reminder, I'm really not need. I hope to say it here, but obviously the right and the opportunity for women to have control over their own bodies is the only way to make them really able to take control over their own lives. So that's what we're talking about, and I think we'll never talk about it enough. I leave the floor to Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for that very good description as to what the right to science is and into our organization. I'll go into a little bit more about how we can use the right to science specifically to support reproductive rights around the world and in Europe. So we first try to approach it from a legal aspect. We use these legal elements to protect and uphold anything under the right to science umbrella. So as Laura said, that's anything from education, technology, science, but also medicine, health. Under the reproductive rights umbrella, we cover things like ending female genital mutilation and, of course, trying to legalize abortion. The first way we do that is through parallel or shadow reports in the UN treaty bodies. So for those who may not know, when countries ratify a treaty or convention, they're now bound to the terms and articles within that treaty. So the treaty body will do a review of that country to see if they're acting in line with their obligations to protect and uphold the rights that are outlined in that convention. So they rely on civil society organizations to provide background of what's actually happening in the country because, as we all know, a lot of these countries will not self-report on what they're doing wrong. So we do a lot of research to find out what is actually happening on the ground in these countries, and we also work with local NGOs if it's a country that we're not locally based in. So there's multiple phases through this. So there's the initial report that the country will submit, along with the parallel reports from the civil society organizations. The treaty body will release their first list of issues that they see the country as failing to meet their obligations. The state will respond with what they're doing, or if they think something is maybe not right that the treaty body has said. We can then provide another supplement with more information. The treaty body incorporates all that into their concluding observations, which include recommendations that we also give on what the state can do to put those rights either back or to correct when rights have been violated or taken away. And sometimes most of this process happens just online through the UN database, but sometimes it also happens in person, and we will travel to the treaty body sessions to answer their questions and provide the recommendations in person. Other things we do are the individual complaint mechanisms in a lot of the UN treaty bodies, and so that is if an individual person feels the country has violated their rights, and they can, if they've exhausted their legal remedies, their domestic remedies, then we can go through a treaty body, and that will be the Human Rights Council, the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. It can be the Committee on the Rights of the Child, on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the Committee Against Torture. Reproductive rights can fall under a lot of these treaty bodies. And then we also fight legal cases in the international human rights courts for people whose rights have been violated by their country as well. And we've fought cases on reproductive rights in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, the African Court of Human Rights, and I think we're working on some in the European Court of Human Rights as well, since we know that there are a lot of countries in Europe that are violating reproductive rights, as our colleagues have so wonderfully told us. And then on the other end, in addition to the legal tools that we use, we also advocate for the right to science, as Laura has said. And we do this through our diverse members. They are all experts in a variety of fields in science and social issues. So we publish articles from them on our website. They share their expertise, their own recommendations on how can we protect and support reproductive rights around the world. We also have a series of webinars on the right to science and specific topics. These are usually issue-specific or region-specific, and we have one on reproductive rights at the end of this month. The date is not yet finalized, but if you keep an eye on our website and our social media, then we will be announcing that very soon. We also have appeals, and right now we have an appeal for the right to science. It's very general, but it covers a lot. As Laura has said, the right to science is very, very all-encompassing. So right now our appeal is mostly focused on the creation of a special rapporteur on the right to science, someone who can really dedicate more of their time to fighting specifically for these issues, and it gives us another avenue and another recourse when reproductive rights have been violated. And we also have campaigns, and right now we recently launched the Our Bodies, Our Stories campaign. We're heavily inspired by the My Voice, My Choice campaign. And this is just to collect stories from people who have experienced trying to get an abortion, receiving an abortion, not receiving an abortion that they tried to get, and the impacts of this, the effects of this, not only on themselves, but people who have maybe had a loved one who went through this process. And our goal with this is just to show, not just to show, but our goal with this is to show how restrictive abortion laws impact really everyone. Even if you're not the one seeking the abortion yourself, you will be impacted by these laws, and that these are real people that are at the consequences of what politicians are deciding. And just fundamentally, something I think we all agree with is that abortions save lives, and we need to make sure that they are protected. And through these advocacy efforts and our own initiatives, we support these existing ECIs and any new ECIs that come that relate to reproductive rights in our work. So I want to thank our colleagues here for the very, very, very important work that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Giulia Mazzina. We have some few minutes for questions about the My Voice, My Choice campaign in specific and in general on these topics of reproductive rights. So I don't know if there are comments or questions before we move on to the next. Please, go ahead.
Salve, sono Federica.
I am Federica. I'm a medical student, 6th year, and I'd like to mention something which is often neglected. The effect of objection of consciousness in Italy on career choices. I do not want to be a gynecologist. I'm interested in forensic medicine. So this does not concern me personally, but I study at the San Raffaele University, a religious private university. And unfortunately, in many cases in Italy, even those who would like to have an abortion cannot have it because this will have an impact on her career as a doctor. And I think we should discuss this because the objection of conscience or consciousness has this impact. So I'd like you to comment as doctors because you see maybe many situations like this. You are absolutely right.
Absolutely right, of course, because so Italy and Malta are physically very close. It would be very easy for women in Malta to travel to Italy and have an abortion, and yet most do not, and they do not for precisely the reason here that obtaining an abortion in Italy for someone who's coming out of the country, but even for Italian people, is now very difficult. 70%, at least that's the number I've got in my head, of Italian gynecologists are conscientious objectors. So the point being made here that young doctors are choosing not to enter the specialty because they are not going to have support as they go through, even if their beliefs are, even if they have more liberal views and are perhaps prepared to have to conduct abortions, they will not be supported by the seniors above them who are in fact going to be responsible for their promotion. So it becomes almost a self-perpetuating circle. You have absolutely correct. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just a question. In Malta and in Italy, how forceful are the anti-campaigning actions of the Vatican against abortion?
Very good question. So you will be surprised to find, perhaps not surprised, but the Catholic Church actually supported Bill 28. They thought, yes, it's okay, you know, if women are about to die, literally, the law is so strict that you need to be on deathbed to be allowed to have an abortion. But to expand your question more generally, yes, the biggest objection, if you like, but from a cultural point of view, from a socio-cultural point of view, is the Roman Catholic Church. This is the problem, but we can't get rid of them. I mean, I'm sorry to say we all know that the Pope is on his way out. And we are, I must say, I'm very sorry to hear that, of course, because he's a very kind, gentle person, and I'm sorry to see that he's about to die. We wish him the very, very best, of course. But really and truly, the Catholic Church needs to move sideways. And remember that what we're talking about here is we are not saying everyone should have an abortion. What we're saying is, if you need an abortion, please step aside and let those people who need an abortion get one.
I would just maybe add, as a to give more context, in Italy, for instance, I know that, yes, of course, like Catholic Church is also a big factor, but one of the biggest factors are neoconservative groups and anti-abortion groups. And to my knowledge, Meloni actually permitted them to enter hospitals in the last year so that they can be in the waiting room with women who want to have a procedure and, sit with them and convince them to not have an abortion and ask them very personal question in that waiting room while they're waiting for a consultancy with a doctor. So this is one of examples of obstacles that women face.
And just to connect to this, so I studied medicine in Italy myself as a disgrace of life. But another thing that I think it's relevant to remember is that in medical school, even before, it was very relevant what you said, even before you enter the specialty, we have to study gynecology, of course. It's one of our courses. Abortion is not mentioned. It doesn't exist. It's something we don't really talk about. Why should we? But there is a feeling of shame around it, which is horrendous. And I also agree with what you were saying. It's not, of course, part of the right to science is also to keep what's not science out of it, including the Vatican. But on top of it, it's a broader, very active work that has been done in terms of really make it feel like it doesn't belong to the discussion around science and health, but it's something else. It's something nasty. It's something shameful. And that's cultural. I think that's the biggest difficulty, because you can remove the Vatican, but you're not going to remove this sense of shame. So the more we talk about it, as we would talk about a knee replacement or any other kind of medical procedure, the better. We have to normalize it and to make it sound like anything else. And that's the only way to move forward, I think.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I first want to just say thank you to the panelists. It was great to listen to your experiences and stories. A lot of things that you said just makes many of us very angry about a situation in Italy, a situation in Malta. But this is good, because being angry, it means that we are just more motivated. As a disclosure, I am also part of the My Voice, My Choice campaign. Yes, we are angry, but we are very motivated to change things. And I just wanted to come back to the very beginning of the opening of this plenary, when we talked about the European Citizens Initiative, and it was said that it's considered as a weak mechanism, which legislatively wise it is, but I just want to bring up the point that I think it's so important, specifically after hearing everything that was said here, that there is one side of the ECI which is trying to change the legislation, but the second effect is the community building. It's the movement that's being created across, so the pan-European creation, and it has an immense power for the international solidarity. And before, when you talked about Malta, we said that Europe has to, and the citizens have to have the power to say to the governments or to the MEPs that they are being watched, they are being observed, that their decisions are not going to just pass through the eyes of the citizens. And for example, with the My Voice, My Choice, we were, after a year of campaigning, we managed to create an Instagram account that has up to 23 million reach. That's also reach in Europe, but abroad. And this is powerful tool. So even though there is the weakness of the legislative side, there is a power in the movement and community. And we strongly, with My Voice, My Choice, believe that that there is sense in creating that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Last question, intervention. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I'm Agnès Mfumu. I am a youth advocate. I had a question for the Right for Science people. So, as we've seen, there is not much research made on women. This is, per my knowledge, due to investors. So it's not like we can force people to invest on women's researchers, especially if it's private investors. So my first question was, do you have maybe an idea on how to work with that? And secondly, I saw that you had an appeal. You made an appeal in 2020. Maybe do you have an update on that? I was on your website, and I'm curious about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. So I will let Julia talk about the appeal, because she's the one who is actually coordinating it. In terms of funding bodies, that's a huge thing, as you said, and it's complicated because you can't really force them, but in reality, you kind of can. So there are lots of money from research that comes from public funding, and those are actually the biggest. So you have ERC, MRC, UK Rhine, the UK. Those are all government funding bodies, and they're huge. It's lots of money. And then you have the private ones, like, I don't know, there are many examples. I'm based in London, so those come to mind sooner, but Wellcome is a big funding body, and others like that are private. Now, the choices of the funding bodies, as much as even the private ones, as much as they might sound kind of coming out of nowhere or, just based on people's preferences, they are highly, strongly influenced by society and by what's happening around us. So to give you an example, in 2020 with COVID, as much as lots of money was put into finding a vaccine and studying, rightfully so, what was necessary at the time, but that came at the cost of lots of other parts of medicine that have been cut. And this happens all the time. In the 80s was the moment for genetics, so loads of money got into genetics, and then it was the time for neuroscience, which is what I study, so, early 2000 was the right moment to do that, and it always goes in waves. Those waves are not based on, just astrology. They're based on society. They're based on what's required. They're based on what people want. They're based on what researchers want. At the moment, as a researcher, saying I want to study female health is not very appealing because there are not many positions, there are not many PhD jobs open, there are not many places to do that. But again, it's a two-way thing, and usually the private funding bodies, they tend to follow what the public ones do. One of the main funding bodies, even in the UK, is actually the European Union. So from initiatives like these ones, lots of change can be made. And I think we really have to keep in mind that, we do have, as citizens, power around that as well. And again, I will never stop repeating it, but as scientists, we also have a duty to take part into the conversation, because lots of time we want to be nerds and hide, but I think we should talk a bit more. Julia, I'll leave it to the second part of the question.
Yes. Thank you. And very quickly on the research element, I just want to add that a lot of the research it's not even, funding is a huge part of it, but it's that research from a cellular level is typically only done on male cells, and when it's animals, it's only done on male animals because, those pesky female hormones might interact. But if those medications and treatments are going to be used on human females, we need to know how they interact. And there are initiatives and laws in place. So I'm actually from the US. I've been living in Europe for 4 years now, but the US did pass a law, I don't know the exact year, but a while back, that mandated that research now has to include female cells. So literally from the cellular level, we can try to move bigger. So that's one way, as well as to kind of petition governments to start including just mandatory research in that regard. For your question on the appeal, we have made some progress. If you're referring to the appeal that we have right now on the right to science, because it's been on our website for a while, because it is really an ongoing initiative and an ongoing endeavor. And we have made progress. We've had a couple of meetings with other government officials and international bodies and people of the UN as well to really move closer to getting towards the mandate of a special rapporteur. The General Comment 28, part of our appeal now is to get just more countries to recognize it, but getting that general comment to begin with was already a part of it, and now that it's been published, that's, a big part.
Grazie, Giulia. Matteo, and then we close.
Yes, very briefly. As my colleague mentioned as well, the importance of collecting signatures also on the ground is very unique, and you cannot build a movement if it is only online. I worked for online petitions for several years, and an online petition alone is not enough, certainly. And the thing I wanted to mention, I live in Italy, and working on this campaign, I realized the one thing that made me really angry. One of the many organizations, so by the way, we were talking about collecting signatures on the ground, Associazione Coscioni, Eumans really led on that, and it was amazing. organization Obiezione Respinta, I wanted to give this example, is an organization of young volunteers that they fake to be sisters, cousins of people that want to get an abortion, and they go with them to the hospitals. They do that because what happens in Italy is that because of what Tina mentioned, anti-abortion people are in the hospitals and they give fake information, false information. And so these people that are in a vulnerable moment, that just want to fulfill what in theory is in their right, they are alone and they are given false information and they do not have a counter voice. And this organization is made of volunteers that are between 20 and 25 years old. So we are delegating a civil service to support people in a very vulnerable moment to volunteers that are not, this is not even their job, that are under 25 years old, and this is crazy. Like we really need to keep an eye on this because it's like this is one of the things that made me the angriest. The government is where it shouldn't be, and it is not where it's actually needed.
Grazie Matteo e grazie alle relatrici. Thank you very much to the speaker for this session. We move on to the next session, but I want to underscore how it has said that the movement is also important, and I think it's also important how a movement can build network that can be useful also for other causes and objectives. Annalisa Corrado this morning mentioned intersectionality, and of course this doesn't mean that one should agree with everything. You can agree on my voice, my choice, and maybe not be so committed with the intensive farming of the other way around. But we can build an environment of civic participation in Europe. And this is very important because Mario Furore was talking about lowering the level of signature to be collected. Yes, but we organized a poll a few years ago that something like 2-3% of the people know about European Citizens Initiative. This means that if you collect 1 million signatures, you collect 1 million signatures out of 3-4% of people who know the existence of the tool. It would be enough that the tool would be known by, I don't know, 10% of the population, and that would immediately change, and the threshold of 1 million signatures, which in fact will be de facto much lower than it is now. So this is why it's important to unite different European initiative campaigns fighting for the right of the citizen to be informed of the existence of European Citizen Initiative, and then to choose which one to agree and which not. And in the past we organized for the Festa dell'Europa, the Europe's Day, the Sign Day. So to make the Europe Day the day in which citizens are informed about the existence of VCI and choosing, picking up those initiatives that they agree. And I think we should propose to European Citizen Initiative organizer to do the same this year, to join forces for a common effort of informing the people about ECI. So now we are moving to stop suiciding intensive farms. We have already had a demonstration outside the building, and it was very nice, louder and so on. But I call to the podium, Lorenzo Mineo is already here, and Zdenek Jukla representative of the Stop Cruelty, Stop Slaughter European Citizen Initiative, and Giulia Innocenzi, journalist and director of the documentary Food for Profit. So you can sit here. Zdenek, and I will start from Zdenek, presenting the European Citizen Initiative, and after Giulia. No?
No, we want to start by the
Lorenzo, you are the master.
No, we start by the protest and then we go to the proposal.
Okay.
From the protest to the proposal.
When you have a...
Coerente.
Sì. Rigorous. So, Giulia Innocenzi, you have the floor.
Per me personalmente questo è un giorno molto importante perché...
Personally speaking, this is a very important day because 1 year elapsed from the first screening of Food for Profit at the European Parliament. And we had Lorenzo Mineo in the documentary film Undercover, and we filmed MEPs with a hidden camera. That's why we managed to take you inside the European Parliament. And this miracle was possible because MEPs had not seen the films. That's why they allowed for its screening at the European Parliament. And since then, many things have happened. Thanks to our documentary film, we focused on the hundreds of billions of euros which are allocated to intensive farms, and these billions of euros are used to mistreat animals, to pollute the environment, and to jeopardize our health, because of course the food we're talking about is not healthy, and also because intensive farms also generate new pandemics, according to the scientists. So Food for Profit really led to a number of positive results. Two MEPs who were filmed by Lorenzo who were not candidates for the European Parliament election because the film caused much outrage. Paolo De Castro was the Italian MEP from the Democratic Party, and he took money from the meat industry. That was clearly described in his statement of interests, but nobody had ever raised this issue. And it was really incredible to me. An MEP sitting at the Agriculture Commission, and Paolo De Castro, sitting there, took money from the industry on which is making political decisions and to which money are allocated. So he was no longer proposed as a candidate to the European Parliament. So he went back to teach at the Bologna University, poor students in Bologna. Then Chiara Aguilera from the Spanish Socialist Party also created outrage in Spain because in Spain the film was screened on TV, and she told something to Lorenzo, and she said she couldn't care less about farm animals, poultry, chicken, but also cats. And so we discovered that Clara Aguilera was ready to eat cats. Anyway, her statements really outraged Spanish citizens, also because she said that MEPs can decide how to allocate PAC funds. In Italy, we call this conflict of interest. But according to Aguilera, everything was transparent, clear, and acceptable. So the president of the Socialist Party asked her to step down, and she could not put forward a candidacy for the European Parliament. Then, thanks to our film, a turkey farm was shut down in the region of Rome. They really mistreated animals. They loaded also dead turkeys on their trucks or sick animals, and all of that was not legal, was not complying with laws. But this is not a single case. This is something we see in many animal farms. So we are happy that thanks to our film that intensive farm, turkey farm, was shut down. But according to Francesco Lollobrigida, our Minister of Agriculture, our Minister of Agriculture, told us that everything is regular in the animal breeding sector, and he was not aware of our film. And when he discovered it, he replied that what we showed in the film was a rare exception. But here we have lobbyists who have easy access to MEPs, and they have a weight that we don't have as citizens. So they manage to get billions of euros for a polluting sector industry. Intensive farming is against sustainable agriculture. And 1 year after the release of food for profit, the system is not really changing, according to the European Commission and its report on agriculture and on the new common agricultural policy. Well, the situation is really catastrophic. I mean, Ursula von der Leyen has changed their attitude. She was in favor of green policies for Europe to become the first green continent in the world, but now she's taking steps forward, and she was against the demonstrations of farmers in Brussels, and she said that agriculture and green policies do not go hand in hand. But farmers with their tractors were here for a demonstration to show that the European agricultural system is a system supporting big companies and corporations, big polluters, while hindering the life and work of small-scale farmers. And we know that small-scale farmers are closing while intensive farmers are developing. 70% of cultivated land in Europe is devoted to animal farms, and large animal farms are growing more and more. That's why we're here, because we believe that grassroots movements and the ECIs can really make a change. We are asking for the following: stop giving public funds to intensive farming. There's no reason to fund this business, and stop to new intensive farms. There are areas in Italy like the Po River plain which are highly polluted due to the high number of intensive farms. We hope that in the Netherlands also animal farms and their number can be reduced, and a new party was established, the Farmers' Party, which is really implementing initiatives against climate change. So we must be ready to fight. We must have citizens' voice be heard. We are against the public subsidies given to intensive farms, and we are ready to use all the tools available to have our voice clear and strong.
Con Food for Profit il problema degli allevamenti intensivi e dei sussidi pubblici, capiamo che cosa si può fare come Eumans a livello di iniziative politiche. Su questo obiettivo abbiamo depositato una petizione.
Sorry, wrong channel. Sorry. So from protest to proposals, we want to achieve a legal definition of intensive farm so that this industry can be regulated. And we have contacted more than 11,000 citizens and collected more than 11,000 signatures thanks to the Food for Profit documentary. It is now being screened in other countries in Europe. In addition to the petition, we also have the European Citizens Initiative, and I'd like to ask Zenek Jokul now to illustrate their proposal. Stop Cruelty, Stop Slaughter. The collection of signatures has started already. Let's hear how far they have come.
The representative of the initiative Stop Cruelty, Stop Slaughter, which has collected up to this point 500,000 signatures, and it derives from the previous initiative which created a huge movement, an international movement that was started by my Italian colleagues, but I'm here representing from the Czech Republic, so you can see we became very international. And previously it was the initiative End the Slaughter Age. Now we run the second initiative because the previous one collected only 800,000 signatures. We propose two main points which align perfectly with what Giulia and Lorenzo described. The first point is to stop that we request the European legislation to support the production and research of ethical and sustainable alternatives of animal products. We are a unique initiative in the way that with the fact that we finance research projects such as meat from feather at the University of Trento, which has been which has been realized with success, and allow and created a possibility for Italy to produce cultivated meat from the feathers of chicken. And the second point of our initiative is to propose the legislation that would lead to gradual reduction of the number of animals kept in the horrific conditions in intensive animal farming, and it would lead to the substitution of animal agriculture by plant-based and cellular agriculture, and put an end to unnecessary immense suffering of animals. We also focus a lot on education about the existing alternatives, about the fact that intensive animal agriculture poses high risks of zoonotic diseases such as salmonella or avian flu, and is root cause of
antibiotic resistance. It also is a huge environmental threat, or as it is shown by research published in Science by Marco Springman, which says that over 51% of global greenhouse gas emissions, when we include deforestation, feed production, methane emissions, cumulatively is caused by animal agriculture. And other research shows that we could liberate over 70% of land by transitioning to the plant-based agriculture, because agricultural land that is used for animal agriculture and feed production occupies much more land than plant-based agriculture or cellular agriculture would occupy. Because today we have technologies that allow us to, for example, dissolve bacteria that become nutrients for cells that can be grown in very safe conditions in bioreactors. We have many successful startups that already started selling cultivated meat also around Europe. Yes, we want not only to support lab-grown meat, but also alternatives of milk and eggs, and we do it by financing the research. We also focus on the fact that that EU spends billions on subsidies. For example, over 750 billion euros were spent on the marketing of animal products in the period from, I think, 2017 to 2022, while the EU provided subsidies as high as 250 billion euros for the marketing of plant-based product for fruit and vegetables. So we want this to shift, and we call for the system to transition towards more sustainable practices. One other example of a successful transition are the programs that help farmers change their systems into plant-based production facilities. There are many cases of when farmers changed their cage systems in which they used to keep hens for egg production, and they changed them into mushroom plantations. So that's one of the possible ways to go. And I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zdenek. Grazie. Grazie Zdenek. Un coup de théâtre vorrei chiamare...
We now have a coup de théâtre. Alberto Pagliari, who's a Eumans member, is here, and I'd like to call him here because in addition to European citizenship initiatives, there is something else that we can do about intensive farms, and it is judicial procedures with Giulia Innocenzi, when we started working on food for profit, we discovered that there are public funds that are given to meat ads. Advertisement promoting the consumption of meat are paid for with public funds. And with Alberto, we launched some legal suits that are going to need support in order to go on, but Alberto can now tell us something about these legal suits. Well, thank you, Lorenzo, for introducing me. Since last summer, with Eumans, we have started questioning the provision of public funds by the EU as a part of the common agricultural policy, funds that are given to industries that produce and that advertise meat-based products. We estimated that more than 50 million euros were allocated to and given to companies that advertise meat-derived products. We had meetings with the European Commission, and during these meetings we questioned this policy, and we made it clear to them that this goes against legal obligations that the European Commission has, protection of public health, protection of the climate, of animal well-being. All of these are part of the official goals of the European Union. The Commission simply stated that public funds are allocated based on Regulation 1144 of 2014, and that these funds are allocated based on rankings, on official rankings. We questioned the criteria that are used for this ranking. We said that these criteria go against the international duties of the European Commission. At that point, the European Commission couldn't say anything, reply anything, and so we submitted a letter to the European arbitrator, and we received an answer, a reply a few months ago. The arbitrator said that there is administrative discretionary powers that the European Commission can can resort to. So legally, the position of the EU mediator showed, first of all, that there is an interest on the part of the institution. The fact that they replied to our letter is significant. Secondly, the case they made is legally weak. This idea of administrative discretionary power cannot be extended all the way up to the point where it goes against the European legal obligations and international law. So we still believe that devoting such an amount of funds to the promotion of meat go against binding regulations, and so we are now trying to find other options. Appealing to the Court of Justice is an option. It's going to take time, but we could work on that. Or another option, another strategic option, could be to report what the Commission has been doing to the Court of Auditors. We could claim that the Commission is using public funds in a way that goes against European laws. I thank you very much, the association, for getting me involved, and will keep you updated on future developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. In order to reach these objectives, time and resources are needed, and this will be possible also thanks to your support. And I think we have come to the end of this session. Unless there are very short comments on your side or short questions, we'll have more time later for the debate. You have the floor. 1 minute. A very quick question to Alberto. I was wondering whether the mediator has started an investigation on this topic, or whether an opinion was asked of the Commission before the mediator answered. According to the reply of the European mediator, this is not mentioned. We just lodged the complaint against the Commission for the way the Commission manages funds, but we don't know whether an internal procedure was started, an internal investigation was started. Well, we don't know about that. Well, we can move on to the next session. We are on time. Thank you very much for your initiative. Now I'd like to ask Theo Jubilei to come to the podium to introduce the third ECI supported by Eumans, and this since the origin of this initiative. We have been discussing this initiative with Avi Candelli, Narita, Eva and Theo. They really were already there when this initiative was started. Theo, you have the floor. Thank you, Marco.
I don't master the Italian language, so I'll proceed in English. Thank you so much, Marco and Eumans and the organizers, for inviting us and providing us the space to present the Psychedelic Care Initiative, and also thank you to the interpreters that have been helping me to understand better the day. So I had some slides. I don't know if they're... Yeah, okay, great. So I represent the Psychedelic Care Initiative, which is the European Citizen Initiative for the therapeutic use of psychedelic substances in the European Union. So we have launched our European Citizen Initiative on the 14th of January 2025, so this year, a month and a half ago. So really, we are really in the first stage of collecting signatures, and at this day we are around 20,000 signatures. But why we decided that it was necessary to launch such a European Citizen Initiative on such a topic, which is quite unusual, because it's a topic that concerns every one of us in this room. We don't speak too much about it, but there is a mental health crisis in the EU, around the world. And next slide, please. But it touches upon in people. 1 out of 6 people in their lives will suffer from mental health problems. I mean, it's quite large. It can go from depression, burnout, PTSD, insomnia, anxiety, and with current days problems and the world's problems that are going on, and especially today and in the past few months, mental health crisis is getting worse on many regards. So yeah, it's touching million people of any age. It affects us as individuals, as communities, as families, but as societies as a whole. And it's also one of the arguments we use for certain policymakers, but it costs the amount, the estimated cost of the mental health crisis is huge. It's massive every year. It costs more than 4% of GDP. Next slides, please. And on the other side, there is another problem adding to that the current psychiatric treatments, they often fail to help the people in need. For example, people suffering from major depression, up to 50% of them, they resist the current treatments. So it's huge. It's millions of people. In Belgium, it represents 500,000 people. Imagine the rest of the EU. But there are some good news. Since many years, since the 50s and 60s, and now since 2000, international scientific research shows the potential of, next slides, and still next slides, and show the potential of psychedelic substances in treating conditions where the current psychiatric treatments fail to provide a satisfying response. So when we speak about psychedelic-assisted therapies and psychedelic substances, we speak about substances such as psilocybin that we find in the magic mushrooms, LSD, MDMA, but also DMT and other non-classical psychedelics such as ketamine. I won't go too much into details. I have a background in political science, not in psychedelics. But on our website, you can find much more information about what these substances are if you're interested. And also more than, maybe just to explain you a bit how it works, those psychedelic-assisted therapies, because for many people, we don't really know when we speak about those things. But it doesn't work as usual medicine. We don't give you MDMA and you go home and you're treated, but it's really integrated in a psychotherapy process, and that's very important. And what really works when other medicine tend to fail is that psychedelics, they help you go to the roots of the problems, and not only treating the symptoms, but helping you heal from the really roots of the trauma you might have faced. So when we speak about psychedelic-assisted therapies, for example, MDMA, the current trials and the current research in the US, in Europe and Australia shows that MDMA can help, assisted therapy can help for PTSD, for post-traumatic stress disorder, magic mushrooms, psilocybin for depression, end-of-life anxiety. And its substances have been used in Europe and the Western world for decades, and around the world within indigenous communities for centuries, used for healing purposes. But a month ago we had, just before that, but a month ago we had our launch event within these premises, within the European Parliament, and quite unusually for this topic we gathered a member of the European Parliament supporting us from the Greens. Okay, that's not surprising, but also from EPP. And that shows that mental health concerns us all, not only the left people and not only the hippies, let's say, but these treatments, they can actually help people and the million around the world that needs the new treatments. And we had, for this occasion, we had a patient that went through a psychedelic-assisted therapy in Switzerland. He took LSD because he had a life-threatening illness. He had a stage 4 colon cancer, and he was keen enough to share his story last month in the Parliament. I just want to read just a few sentences of his story, but it's not giving him. It's online, the replay of the event, so I invite you to go check it. But just really quickly. He said, my story starts in 2019 when I was diagnosed with colon cancer, stage 4. As you can imagine, difficult moments to cope with, also mentally. And then he explained his trip to on LSD and how he was guided with his psychotherapist. And in the end, he said, what I could attribute to LSD is my relation to emotions. Having grown up as a man, I tended to avoid certain emotions which were sanctioned by society. Altogether, I probably judge less, and everything seems valid. My view on death also changed. I have the feeling that I've seen what I'm expecting in certain ways, and that also makes it less scary. I have stronger roots with my family. I think less, and I feel more. And he ends up as a call to action. I have been through these treatments. I always felt perfectly safe. I had no unpleasant side effects, and they have been quickly efficient from what I can say. So I really hope that more patients can have access to this kind of treatments. And in the EU now, you cannot have psychedelic-assisted therapies in no countries. You can have in Australia now, in Switzerland in 2014. But in the EU, it's not possible at all. There are some clinical trials going on, but it's really hard to access. So that's really why we launched this initiative, because we believe that in the end, every EU citizen should have the right to access those therapies should they need to, in the context of this global mental health crisis. And that's why we came up with 3 requests to the European Commission. That's the next slides. So in order to avoid having only 1 or 2 countries going forward with these treatments, such as the Netherlands, Czech Republic, that are already moving forwards, we want EU standards to be developed. We want countries to work together. We want them to share the best practices, best standards to then implement in the 27 member states. So that's our first request, is to have a group of professional and patient representatives to build those standards, best practices for future implementation. Then to boost EU-funded research on many regards. We need more research when it comes to psychedelics, but for conditions that are really promising. For example, there are some really promising research on anorexia and the use of psychedelics. And this condition is hard to treat. We don't have many effective treatments for that. And the third one is, well, the thing that is slowing down research and policy initiatives in the whole world is the UN regulation. It's the 1971 Convention on Psychotropic Substances that classifies psychedelics as useless, no medicinal interest. It's substance one, it's Annex 1 of this convention, where you can find also cocaine, amphetamines, and other substances. And we basically call the European Commission to replicate what they did on 2019 regarding cannabis, is to just ask the European countries to have a common position to address this convention, because this makes no sense. This makes research really hard, with many administrative burdens on import, exports of substances, on accessing the research for researchers. It's really complicated. So we believe that should be tackled as well. So have a common position. And next slide. But that's the legal framework of our request. But the initiative, and that has been addressed before, our ECI is not only to have a legal change, because it's maybe not likely that the Commission, and when we look at the Health Commissioner we have now, it maybe not most likely we have a strong response from the Commission. But one of the main issue when it comes to psychedelic and psychedelic-assisted therapies in the EU is the stigma surrounding those substances. And that's what really slows down research, policy initiatives and research and funding. So really this European Citizen Initiative, it gives us the potential to federate associations, citizens, organizations, structures around this campaign to show that there is interest, there is research, there are people and clever people, and not hippies that want that to get implemented. And I have nothing against hippies, but yeah, so the initiative the campaign is also there to inform the general public and decision makers about what psychedelic substances are. So who we are, and I think that's also interesting, because we are the people behind the initiative. They are not the typical activists, let's say. I think 90% or 95 or almost 100% of the people we have in the initiative didn't know about what an ECI was. So that was the first part of the work. When we said, "Hey, are you interested to join?" They said yes, but what is that? And I don't know anything about the EU. So it was also a democratic process for us to onboard them in this initiative. Like, they had to learn also what this initiative was. The idea came in July 2022, so quite a long time ago. So we had to build. It was only me in the first stages. I had the idea, and then some associations starting backing us. Avi was also in the room, was one of the first citizens to join and help. And then we have built the initiative around national teams, around people, citizens association in the countries to adapt the campaign to the national context. And we have now participants from over 20 countries, and not only EU. We have people from the US, from the UK. They cannot sign, but they're willing to help, from Switzerland as well. And so we engaged in, a month ago in the collection of signatures. And we also engaged with some association around the EU, and it's quite large. You can see Eumans, one of the first partner, and also Associazione Locacoshoni. But it's quite large. We have people, we have association on the rights to, the rights of indigenous communities, association on research on psychedelics, other on harm reduction. It's quite a broad coalition. So it shows that there is this interest and this urge to push for these therapies in the EU. And yes, that was the main information about this initiative. But yeah, I feel like for me it has also been, it's maybe on more personal notes, has also been this initiative like a really interesting adventure. Learned a lot, you meet a lot of people, you learn from the others, and you develop so much skills, so much competence, and I think that's for a citizen is also a good adventure to embark on, whatever the subject, whatever the topic. If you feel like you want to, if you feel motivated enough to push for something, then you should definitely go. It's not the easiest path, as the people from My Voice, My Choice said, it's quite a tough adventure, but it's a beautiful one. So I'm really glad that we launched this initiative personally, but also collectively. Thank you. And the next slides. And if you want to sign, got the next slides. The next one, the last one. There was one last.
QR code.
Yes, if you want to sign, you can
Most
scan.
important thing, the QR code. Okay, grazie Theo. There are questions. Laura, and you.
Just a quick comment. So actually two. The first one is that for, let's say, chronological purposes, I would probably flip the order of the goals from changing the legislation to research to implementing shared guidelines. But just to, just because I'm a bit OCD. But in terms of moving forward, so, I mean, Science for Democracy is supporting, is one of the associations that is supporting it, so of course you know where I'm coming from. But I'm a psychiatrist, and the one thing we want is better treatment. And it is true there is a huge misunderstanding also what really is happening in the field. As a scientist, on the other hand, working with colleagues who work with psychedelics and being part of this context, we would all love to have the panacea to treat everything. And of course, psychedelics are giving lots of hope in that sense. And hope it's also very important to have in general. One thing that I would just say, I think to remind myself as well, but really all of us, this is like, of course, the work on psychedelics is super important because molecules themselves don't hold any morality, and that's the one thing that I think we should really fight against, because it's just molecules, so we should study them as anything else. As any other molecule, though, sertraline or SSRIs, they work on 50% of the patients, and it's wonderful for the patients that these drugs work for. I expect something similar from psychedelics, being a scientist and being a bit cynical and a bit negative with life in general. So I would just remind everyone, once we get there, when we'll get there, just not to stop there, because I think mental health has always been a bit the poor kid of medicine, and there's so much to do beyond psychedelics as well. But this is an incredibly important step in that direction. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. And regarding the requests, it was a choice indeed it was to present the way they will most likely happen. The third one, the commission, that we kind of restructured the request, because when we asked the ECI forum and the legal team of the commission, they told us, that is not going to happen. It's not EU competence, it's the national states, they signed the convention, so it's not up to us. So we structured saying, okay, but we call the commission to call the European countries to adopt a common position, to then address the convention on site. So it's a long process. It's mostly symbolic, I think, in our case, because this is the one that is less likely to happen. I think this is one of the most important international, and actually in 8 days, 4 days, this convention will meet in Vienna. So there is also a lot of pressure from the civil society to change. And I think it is likely in the coming years we'll see a change at the UN level. Regarding your second observation, comment, I definitely agree. And for me, SSRIs, there is a lot of people in the psychedelic field saying SSRIs, they are bad. They didn't work. It's not a good thing at all. I don't agree. It saves a lot of lives when people also go through psychotherapy on the side. And in mental health, I agree there is so many problems. I mean, apart from psychedelics are not going to save the world at all. Mental health problems is multifactorial, environmental, anxiety, family, communities, capitalism, individualism, so many problems psychedelic won't solve, but they are part of the solution. And it can help now people, and estimated like 50 million people in the EU. We don't have the means yet. We don't have the therapists. We don't have the trained therapists. We don't have the people to go by them. But if we start now the work and we recognize the benefits and we start gathering people that know already about how it works and how it should be implemented, it's going to save us a lot of time and it's going to save potentially a lot of lives in the end. So yeah, that's also why we're starting now the work. Yeah.
There. So this is what I've been waiting for all day. Thank you for existing. My name is Wim Pryor. I work for a company called Spirit Guide. We help people back from depression, trauma, things that are related to the mental health industry. As a practitioner myself, and spirituality has such a huge impact on consciousness in our society. We see that consciousness is very limited by the ego created by society, that this must be as it is or else it cannot evolve or cannot be what it is. So this is limiting the human energy of evolving. And I notice when we use psychedelics or when people are open to using it as a natural source of opening themselves, their heart chakra, their soul system, whatever you want to call it, right? We have many names for it, even God. Then we again feel and we allow ourselves to heal. And that's really the purpose behind psychedelics in mental health industry, to really create a safe zone for people also of young ages, old ages, to be able to take psychedelics so that they have the opportunity to find consciousness again, to find a growth of their life force, and to really give them the opportunity again to think for themselves. And I've been working a lot on franchise, how to look at it from a business perspective. How can we have a private-public collaboration between institutions of the European Union? How can we involve subsidiary countries? How can we have economical benefit from all of this? Because let's be honest, if somebody is burnout or depression, it's not being very efficient to the company. So yes, I can only applaud this initiative. It's extremely important, as mental health is such a huge problem. It's even the biggest pandemic that we are facing right now. I especially see it in the Gen Z generation. They are so deeply unconscious. They are being brainwashed and drained into this digital community, let's say. And that's a huge danger that we're facing with AI arising, you know. Okay, long dialogue here. I want to just applaud you. I want to say thank you, because it's essential, but also keep in mind that not everybody needs to take psychedelics in order to have mental health. There are a lot of techniques, there are a lot of ways of soul healing, and opening the heart chakra is a very important one, to re-engage people into a more natural way of living where emotions do have a space in our society.
We take a second question and then the answer.
I have two very concrete questions, actually. One is, do you envision it as something all doctors have knowledge of, or do you envision it as like a very specialized thing? Like, for example, you can go to a therapist for like general things, or for example, you go to a grief counselor, like that difference. Which one do you envision it to be?
Yeah, personally, it's hard to say. There are many visions in the field, and it's really the first stages. And there's many ways people, countries will implemented. And it's based on their national healthcare as well, like national system, national frameworks. In Switzerland, for example, it's since 2014, but it's under certain conditions. So every doctor actually could prescribe psychedelics, but it has to be approved by a special committee, ethic committee at the national level, federal level. For me, I would say that the best would have trained therapists and that have been going through those experiences as well. And it could be prescribed to go to that therapist by a psychiatrist, by a doctor, but a psychologist might be also interested. So, but for now, the main struggle, if we had, for example, MDMA-assisted therapies implemented in the countries, for now we don't have the resources. We don't have the human resources for that. People are not trained, and that's what we need to develop now. We need trained people, so we have the maximum to answer the need. Also, we need to think about reimbursement schemes, or is going to be implemented in national healthcare. So there's a lot of discussion to be having, and that's why us, as citizens, we're just trying to push that on the debate, to put that on the debate and then discuss what's the best way to implement and have experts that know about it around the table. It could be for the Commission. I mean, the first request we have, it's mainly, okay, we just do an expert group, put people around the table that know, put indigenous people, put psychonauts, put therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists around the table and draft the best practices, because some countries are moving forward. We already have some knowledge, but let's gather it and let's imagine it for the EU.
Yeah, and the other part was whether you are like, because you have to start somewhere, are you starting with targeting like temporary mental conditions or lifelong mental conditions, or both?
Again, it will depend national frameworks. For us, the best way to start with would be, it is really also resonating with Marco Capato's work and Luca Coscioni's work with the palliative care, because it makes no sense that people today cannot have access when they are in palliative care or for compassionate use. It could be implemented. I think in Italy you are now driving some legal cases to make people, have access to it, because there is the right to try and in these conditions, and it also would help us and help the field have real nature of it, real data evidence, real world data evidence from this use, and then enlarge it to expand it to other conditions. But for now, the most logical thing that will happen will be for people who have tried other treatments and that will then try this. But in my opinion, it should be in the first-hand option. But again, no resources for that moment.
Very brief, just to say, I was living in the USA and I'm a part of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and we managed to legalize many psychedelics in different states like Oregon and New York states, California. And I've seen personally a lot of, I've witnessed a lot of very positive results, which I'm sure you've heard about with PTSD and different things, that people who in 1 or 2 sessions do the work of 1,000 of hours of session. It's, I want to say, a bit like a massage when you unblock something and suddenly you open up, like you said. I was just wondering, and I think you kind of said it, but are you connected to all the world science behind it? Are you all working together? Because that's what I believe should happen.
Yeah, we have very brief as well as a response, but yeah, we are making connections with associations that already kind of done the work, like MAPS, and Rick Doblin endorses the initiative, who is the founder, the advocate for MDMA-assisted therapies in the US since 30 years. And there have been some problems, some slowing downs recently in the US, but it's going, we're going there. So yeah, we are in cooperation now, and the European Medicine Agency is a thing I didn't touch upon in my presentation, but even the European Medicine Agency organized a 2-day workshop specially dedicated on psychedelic-assisted therapies. And they invited people from Australia, because it's legal now since 2019 in Australia, maybe a bit less, but people from the US, people from Canada, where it can be used in compassionate use, and people from Switzerland. So there is this international cooperation, and we are also collaborating with scientists from around the world.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leo Jubilee. Thank you, Psychedelic Care. Avi Candeli, all the other people that are working on this project, we are very much committed to that. So, My proposal is to have a 5-minute break. Some of you propose 4 minutes or 3 minutes, but in this case I want to be really large and compassionate. We talk about compassion. So the next session would be the Humans movement and proposals. We will start with one proposal that we already know will be presented to the Congress, Aurora Rosso di Vita, about the polar bear, but of course also your proposal and comments. We will read out the motion for resolution of the Congress that you should already have received via email, and we will have also the formal decision for active members of UMA at the final stage of the Congress. So in 5 minutes back here. Thank you very much. Bene, prendiamo posto, per favore. Prendete posto. C'è una grossa indisciplina nella sala, come se io non stessi chiedendo.
Would you please be seated? I see that you're not disciplined. I'm speaking Italian. Please, take a seat. How do you say that in Sardinian, Paola Cossu?
Huge discussion over there. Bene, grazie. Scusa Lorenzo, cosa è successo? Possiamo iniziare?
Can we start? In the month before this Congress, we organized weekly meetings with all the people who had shown their interest in this Congress, and Aurora Rosso di Vita, my friend, and has immediately brought to our attention something I was not aware of, and maybe you're not aware of as well, and I'd like to hand over to Aurora to present this proposal. I'm sure this will become a proposal and an initiative, and this is one of the roles of humans. We should not take an ideological stance on 50 topics on which we should all agree on, like in a party, in a political party. Humans, on the contrary, should be a tool to activate participatory tools to promote fundamental freedoms, environmental sustainability, protection of human rights. But these issues, of course, are very diverse. And I think that Aurora's commitment is really related to our humans methodology that we would like to extend to many other topics and initiatives.
Everybody, and I will start because I know to being the last, I need a bit of your attention, so I will, okay, the slide is not, 1 second, but okay, I can start with one question. Please raise your hand. How many of you knows that polar bear like this are in danger for climate change challenge? How many, please? Thank you. Now the other slide and the other question. How many of you know that almost 1,000 polar bears a year are killed for hunting? Okay, you knew.
Io lo so perché me l'hai detto tu.
I knew because you told me, Marco is saying.
First inconsistency that I became passionate for, how you can hunt in such big number a species, an animal that is already fighting for its survival. So let's see together how this has been possible and how we all believe that is protected and in reality is not. The reality is that is mentioned and listed as a vulnerable animal in the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the red list, so is already a vulnerable animal, and 2 steps are away from total extinction. The number of polar bear is not very well known on Earth. There are only some estimated. The estimates are very not good quality, let's say. But okay, the best one, they said it's around 26,000 polar bears are living at the moment. And the reproduction rate is very low for the bears because it takes almost 3 years for a female polar bear to give birth to a cub. In the sense, it's the normal reproduction time, but then the mother has to stay almost 2 years and a half with the cub. So there are already a lot of challenges that this poor animal is facing. Then, how is possible that it became so heavily hunted? During the 50s and the 60s, already the polar bear were going to be less and less. So all the 5 range states that are the 5 countries where the polar bears in the Arctic is living, they agreed to a convention, a treaty signed in 1973. And they said, okay, no more hunting. At that time, during the 50s and the 60s, climate change was not even mentioned. Nobody was thinking about climate change. So the big challenge was just hunting. So there was Article 1 of this convention, and then there is Article 3. Article 3 that put inside a lot of clause of exemption. And one of these exemptions is that local people with traditional methods can kill for survival reason the polar bears. So now, this small clause provision in Article 3, comma D, let's say, has become the gateway for all the abuse and the hunting number that I showed you earlier. So I give you, it's unreadable, I know, but I became passionate, so I started to read the book. These are the statistics, and maybe the next slide, the last number, the last line, it's the total number of killed polar bears in the year. Maybe here I try to put just the total to give you a complete idea. So after the 74, 73 is the year where the convention was signed. 74 is the year of entry into force. If you look at the last line, you see that almost is 1,000 per year. That summed back to 1974, it's even more than 40,000 polar bear have been killed over this year. So how this has been possible? I gave you already the hint that it was the provision in Article 3 of the Convention. There is a quota system, and once, even if you make a simple Google search, these are 2 Google searches I did after I start to search, most of the killing it's happening in Canada and Greenland, because there is the Inuit people living, and Canada is giving Greenland, that ironically have been also the countries who sterilized Inuit female population in the previous year. They gave an exchange saying, okay, you have this quota, you can kill the polar bear. So they are selling this quota to hunters and to company for trophy hunting. And there is also another publicity that has influenced our mind, that was done even from the WWF, that has been a scandal a few days ago. We always have seen this slide, adopt a polar bear, so we are doing everything for the polar bear. But the reality is that, in fact, WWF was always opposing more protection for the polar bear, with the argument that this type of hunting is beneficial for the Inuit people. And there are a lot of studies that shows the contrary, because there is some study of the economics of trophy hunting that shows that only 2% of the total income goes to the Inuit people, while a skin or a skull of a polar bear are sold in China at the auction, or even in Canada, for almost $120,000. So the reality is weird. It's like we are shooting at someone while the house is burning. So we have been very badly informed, so there are a lot of fake news, and the reality is different. The fake news is that we have discovered now, I hope you agree with me, is that polar bears are protected. The other fake news is that climate change is the main threat to extinction of polar bear. The other fake news is also that it said hunting is sustainable and done for conservation purposes, and also that there are good estimation of polar bears population. The truth is that if they continue to kill the polar bears in this number, polar bears will be extinct very soon. Hunting is also forcing what is called reverse evolution, because the hunters are killing the healthiest animal, the bigger, the stronger, the few that have maybe the possibility to adapt to climate change. Instead, the one weaker have less opportunity to survive. And then also that with this kind of money, of course, they are pushing for poaching activities. So, what to do? I hope that after this you are all with me. You want to fight for the polar bear, because I give you also another fear. My fear is that until now the country who supported and protected more the polar bear were the United States of America, because independent from what the European Union did, they were always suggesting an uplisting from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 of the polar bears in the CITES Convention. So here I need to give what it is a CITES. The CITES is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species and wild fauna, and this convention has 3 appendices. So Appendix 1 is the strongest, where you have the most of the protection and the trade is not allowed. Appendix 2 is where the polar bears is, and so trade is still taking place. So, to start a campaign, I think the first things should be, first of all, raise awareness among us, because for me it was a shock to know that polar bears are hunted in these numbers. And then the concrete action would be also to make a lobby here in the Parliament with the Commission, because I give you another bad news. Who opposed the uplisting when the United States wanted to uplist from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 the polar bear was the European Union. And because I think WWF is very lobbying Commission and Parliament people. So everybody said if the WWF said trade is not a problem, instead we should cut trade because this will stop the killing, at least we hope. And my fear, but then I leave the floor to another activist from Norway that he has done a video. My fearing is that in the Antig website that I was searching, it's said, not even in a mild way, that they are going to lobby for change now the legislation in America. So America, even without this stronger, they have a ban now to import the body parts of the bears. So if now, with the Trump administration, it's even United States follow European Union and the other country with less protection, polar bear is finished. So I think be human, join e-humans and save the polar bear.
Aurora ha già fatto tutto, c'è anche tutto il copy della campagna, c'è tutto, quindi non dobbiamo neanche...
Aurora did everything. She also prepared the copy for the campaign to protect polar bears.
It was a bit difficult to come. A bit. Ole Lioden, who is an activist that since years is fighting, and he wrote a lot of books and articles on this issue. He made a recorded video for us.
Ok, adesso cerchiamo di mettere la amplificazione.
Trophy hunting and commercial trade in polar bears. And when I worked on this project, I was shocked about the amount of polar bears killed and also how many polar bear skins are exported from Canada to countries like China and Norway and other countries also in Europe. What I also found during these years of investigating the hunting and trade was there is a lot of unsustainable hunting. Many governments and organizations call it sustainable hunting and subsistent hunting, but the truth is it is more commercial and it's unsustainable. In 2019, the biggest area in Canada called Nunavut started to increase the quota of the killing of female polar bears. So now it's possible to kill 50% more female polar bears in the biggest part of Canada. And this is really, really bad because females, they can only get cubs, up to 2-3 cubs every third year. And they're very important for our population, like for the polar bears. Another thing that's also happened is that the government in Nunavut has declared that the management of polar bears is not sustainable anymore. It's managed for decrease. So they are hunting not only more females, but they're hunting to decrease the number of polar bears. And still it's allowed to export polar bear fur and polar bear products from Canada to Asia and Europe, which is really bad. Also, what's happening is trophy hunting. Between 50 and 70 polar bears are killed every year in Canada by trophy hunters. They are targeting, like also the commercial skin trade, the biggest, strongest and healthiest polar bears. The problem with this hunting is that the weakest and smallest polar bears are those who now are left behind to try to adapt to a warming climate in the Arctic. So this is really, really bad. You have all heard about the climate change in the Arctic, and when you kill and hunt and take out the strongest, best fit animals, it will be a disaster if we cannot stop it. So it's very important that we are getting better protection for the polar bears. That means the CITES, which is the trade official organization for trade in endangered species, it has to be polar bears to uplist to Appendix 1, which means no trade. At the moment, polar bears are under Appendix 2, which allows for 300 polar bear skins exported every year, and also trophy hunting. So what my message today is, it is important to ban the trade, to ban the trophy hunting, so the polar bears will have a chance to survive and adapt to a warming climate. Thank you.
Allora, no, vabbè, questa la dico in italiano.
I'll now say something in Italian. You might think that with all the things that go on in the world, polar bears are not a priority, but they're like canary birds in a coal mine. We speak about climate change, and we hunt the species that are hit worst by climate change. It's human greed that leads people to killing bears in order to turn them into a carpet or a trophy. It's really hard for me to believe that nothing has been done so far in order to protect the polar bears. And there's also the food pyramid in the Arctic that is altered if polar bears are become extinct. And as we know that changes in the environment also have an impact on us, we should be aware of how dangerous it can be if the carnivore at the top of the food pyramid disappears. And now I'd like to call Lorenzo Mineo for the final part of our meeting. Formally, this is also a Congress and an Assembly of Humans members. As I said in the beginning, we decided that as there are maybe 20 Italian-speaking members here, but most of the members are Italians, we decided we'd have a Congress about ideas and proposals. We decided to hold this in Brussels at the European Parliament, because this makes it harder for national members to attend, but this was an opportunity for us to strengthen links with MEPs and with the European institutions. We believe this is part of the building of a pan-European movement. You have to start from ideas and proposals. And for a truly democratic game to take place, the game has to be open to all of Europe. Instead of having, let's say, a simulation by playing among us in Italy, we decided that we would open up the game to members from other European countries. We have sent you all the documents, the amendments to our regulations in the past few weeks by email. We replied to all the comments and remarks that were made. We accepted most of the amendments, as I said. And now, at the end of today, we want to approve these documents, and we saved this as the last item on the agenda because not because we underestimate the importance of this formal moment. We did it because we want to have a new Congress soon, and either online or elsewhere, not at the institutions. We'll be meeting soon, and during the next meetings we'll try and discuss with as many people as possible from as many European countries as possible. And this is the reason why we drafted this agenda and we convened this Congress. We now have 36 minutes left. And for the Eumans members in the room, we'll be asking you to formally approve the documents because that's a formal obligation. And we'll also have a secret ballot on the candidates as announced in the online meetings we had in the past few weeks. And Lorenzo and myself, we are running for President Treasurer respectively. So formally speaking, it's up to the members to vote for us. But I'd like to make sure that everyone agrees on this procedure. And I'm now inviting you to take the floor for 1 minute, as they do at the European Parliament. When they give you 3 minutes, it's really a long time. So we are now giving you 1 or 2 minutes for comments, proposals, suggestions about how humans might grow, or what initiatives we should be focusing on. Or if you have any questions, now is the time when you can ask them before we start the formal part. I mean, we could read out the motion, but as that would take time, as in the QR code, through the QR code that you can see on the screen, you can access all the files and documents. I think it would be better for us to use this time here together in this room to share opinions, comments, questions on humans. So I'm finished now. Who would like to take the floor? One of you. You're both blaming the other for wanting to take the floor. Please introduce yourself, say your name. My name is Pietro Perconti, and it was Alessio's idea to say what I'm going to say. We were thinking the following. As we are very keen on the potential civic function of AI, as we believe that AI could strengthen democracy, we wonder whether we shouldn't be adopting AI systems in the democratic life of humans, so that we can learn how to use AI tools so that we can be more credible when we promote AI. And we could also be a case study if we try to start using AI within our organization. I think it's a good idea. I'm not sure about how it could be put into practice, but we'll do that later. Someone raised their hand from the back. My name is Attilio Recchio. I'm from Verona. Very briefly, thank you for this very interesting day, for all the information, and for everything you do. And I suggest that in 2025 a campaign is launched on the housing crisis. This is something that affects all of Europe. It's of interest to young people, to millions of temporary workers, migrants, millions of elderly people who are sliding towards poverty. The housing crisis is a multifactorial problem. One of the most important causes is that social housing policies have been underfunded for years and years. The private market has come to a standstill, among other reasons because of over-tourism. Large, medium and small cities and towns in Europe are tourist destinations, and that's a problem. So this could be a campaign on social rights. And I'm suggesting that you take up this issue, because I think one of the reasons why many Europeans are so reluctant to believe and so distrustful of a federal Europe is that in the past 10 years the European Union has kind of forgotten one of their best inventions, that is to say the welfare state, social protective measures for the vulnerable groups in society, something that was invented in this continent. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I agree with you, and there is a methodological consideration I'd like to make. There are many fundamental issues that are not included in our motion, in the file that was sent out to you. Jean-Luc Romero, for instance, mentioned the sexual rights and the non-discrimination rights. But there is a difference, a basic difference between a party that tries to have a position on every single issue and a movement like ours that has goals. So rather than saying, I suggest that Humans takes up this issue as if there were a structure within Humans that decides which campaigns should be started or not. You should take the initiative as Aurora did. She didn't tell me, Marco, you should be protecting polar bears. She got interested in that issue, and she's now submitting it to us. And this has to do with our budget too, our finances and our budget, because in case you think that we are a very wealth trust fund that can subsidize any issue. Well, I know how important this topic is, and I think that it should be dealt with. But for us to deal with our ambitious goals that we have listed in the general motion, and in order to enrich those goals with the suggestions and contributions of the activists, well, we also have to bear in mind what the available resources are. As Marco mentioned, he's running for president, I'm running for treasurer, and it's a very challenging situation. for us, because we have a loss of 3,000 euros. The investment we made in order to organize this Congress led us to this loss. Our bottom line at present is at a loss, but this is just temporary. The fact that there are so many of you here today means that the situation can change. It means that we can raise funds, and the raising of funds is going to be an essential function, an essential task for humans, and it's a mission that we are starting now. It concerns us all, so not just the two of us on this side, but also you as Humans members. And so and the balance sheet and the budget are among the files that you have received, where there you have all the figures. The balance sheet and the budget that the members should approve if they believe so is until the end of October, because that's our fiscal year, and the current situation is worse than what's described in the files, because we are now almost at a loss, and the Citizens' Assembly that will be held tomorrow and the day after is the result of an ad hoc contribution. Paul Blocker is the leader of a European project that is called the CityDem. It's a European program that is part of the SERVE program about participation. And thanks to 23,800 euros that were allocated to Humans as part of a wider program, where there are other partners that deal with other aspects. Well, we have the honor of opening the first CityDem assembly tomorrow, and you're invited to be there tomorrow. It's not over tonight. Please join us at Brussels University and at the Université Libre de Bruxelles. You can find the address on our website, and you're going to tell us the address in a few minutes. Any other people who'd like to take the floor? I mean, this is a unique opportunity. You are at the European Parliament, and we still have half an hour during which where you can say what you like, what you don't like. You can express your opinion.
Questo evento, della possibilità di essere qui.
Thank you for organizing this event and for allowing us to be here as European citizens. I have a practical question. I mean, you have many projects. We have discussed many topics and campaigns. All of them today are very interesting to me. My name is Antonio Mordente. Sorry I didn't introduce myself, but thinking about the implementation of these projects, and I'm saying projects to simplify, how do you think members will participate in these projects? How can members make their contribution in practical terms? This is a fundamental question, of course. How can a pan-European movement can work? The answer is we don't know. Actually, if we had known, well, we would already have a big pan-European movement. Clearly, it's not that simple. So we got to get there together. Of course, we started doing some things. For instance, trying to take stock of ECIs is very important. Our interaction with My Voice, My Choice campaign allowed us to organize venues for signature collection, and so we did this in practice to add something to that online campaign. So as we collected the signatures for My Voice, My Choice, well, I hope that our experience can go to the benefit of other ECIs, so we'll create a sort of platform for European participation. This will need regular meetings, of course, meetings of Eumans members or of people who are interested in supporting Eumans, and then we'll have to organize thematic meetings as well. We'll have to understand how AI tools can support us in this task. We can also see whether tools like Discord can help us. We'll have to understand which are the best tools to digitally activate some of our activities. Our statute, modified, as you have seen, involves two types of memberships, one stronger, the other weaker. So you can become a member, you can register as a member, you pay 72 euros, 6 euros per month. This is a political choice, and this way you formally can vote at the next Congress, can also put forward your candidacy if you want, but we do not want to limit participation to Eumans members only. Even those who are not full-fledged members but who have time and energy to share can do so through a free-of-charge registration system. If you register, then you'll be consulted. For instance, if we want to decide which ECIs Eumans want to support, well, we can launch a consultation or a survey with full-fledged members and non-members. Of course, being a member is a very strong political act, and it's also a way to fund our initiatives. So there's no preset formula. One of the major obstacles against a truly pan-European movement, I'm not talking about an international movement collecting national movements, I'm talking about direct interaction among people, and one of the major problems was language. And thanks to artificial intelligence, this problem is less complex. I mean, this barrier is less support citizens' exchanges in Europe. We'll have to check this. This is a topic we'll have to discuss, for instance. So my answer is, I don't know. Paul? I'd like to talk about this dimension. We have, but I have a question on the pan-European dimension. I think it's a beautiful dream. Having activists organized at the European level to promote rights and the rule of law. But considering the amendment to the bylaws, to the statute, what is clear is that we have to be locally present. It's like Calypso Nicolaidis' theory. I mean, democracy means that demos have to meet and gather. So I see Article 9, which deals with humans groups. So is this the right tool? Because we want to extend, diversify, and create a truly pan-European organization, including also people and associations outside of Italy. Well, we should be present there. So what about these humans groups? Maybe a simpler step forward would be to have organizations like humans in other countries, organizations who are ready to use the label humans to carry out their activities. Otherwise, I think it will be extremely difficult to become a pan-European movement. Thank you, Paul. Francesco.
Most of what I wanted to say has already been said by Paul. No, completely fine. So it means that we share the same concerns. And my concern is probably what we should think about is, do we want to be a platform or do we want to be a movement? And that, of course, depends on the resources, that depends on the human capital that we dispose of, that depends on a lot of things. But this is the real question that we should ask of ourselves. And not only those who manage the movement right now or try to organize these kind of events, but also those who are attending these events today. So this is a reflection that I would probably leave for the next few events and gatherings of humans. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Francesco. I don't know if you take both as an answer, but it would be probably my answer. I just wanted to underline that pan-European doesn't mean, well, pan-European, it means that the national dimension is not enough, but is not enough from the top, but maybe also from the bottom. So there is no, I think that the local initiatives can be pan-European, and in this case, the platform could help and should help exactly in that. Maybe to take a very local cause or a fight in a remote area of Europe and helping them to create a network with other similar fight around Europe, movement around Europe. So this is why my answer is both. Because on one side, there are things that maybe we decide, that we have decided in our meetings, and we decide to fight for those issues. But there can be also other issues that we learn somebody else is doing. And why not? Why not supporting them? Why not joining forces? So in this case, it will be more a platform than a movement initiative. And we should find a way, the organizational procedure, to combine both. I think it's possible, but and also my fear in let's say in the national chapter is that after some year is inevitable that national reasonment, dynamic and interest prevail. So it's true that maybe sharing a language, for example, it's already pushing in the direction of having those of one nationality talking together. But I think that this should not go beyond the language. I would resist to the idea of having humans Italy, humans Spain, humans France. I think yes, we can have channels in Italian, in French, for those who want to discuss some issues in their languages. But after a while, if the organization is a national organization, then become national as a logic and also as a political priorities, and the very idea of having Europeans working together toward the common goals risks to to be lost in the path. But we can discuss this. Andrea.
Yeah, thanks. Following this reasoning, today we have discussed about many global issues. Canadian hunting of polar bears and global carbon pricing issues. So we are not even European. We are talking about global stuff somehow. And I think it's normal because many issues, they matter at global scale. And if we take care about an issue and this issue is raised, why shouldn't we approach it because it's out of European borders? So actually, apart from our name of humans, it is because we are and we started from. But it's also true that we want to change conventional problems of our present, and at the end, it's not only European that matters. At the same time, I think that talking to citizens means also trying to solve local issues, starting from European treaties, which is what we are doing. Applying instruments is a way of going to citizens to propose a solution for local or pan-European issues. Citizens' Assembly are an example. And I want to remember what Per Vigilio D'Astoli told this morning about the Convention of Aarhus. The Convention of Aarhus is actually a great idea for us to show that there is a reason why we are doing things. Convention of Aarhus says that citizens must participate to the decision-making process in environmental issues at all levels, local and Europeans. And if they can't, they can denounce. This is applicable to everything, to the intensive farming, because they do not know what intensive farming means, for example. And they cannot participate to any decision about a new intensive farm to be installed in Poland or in Italy. It applies to many local issues where citizens are everywhere in Europe. They cannot participate to the decision-making process until the decision has been taken by the local government, and then they can protest. That's what they can do. So this is an example that I would like to take, and it could be a strategy for the incoming year to start from the Aarhus Convention and to do something for locals.
Grazie, Andrea. Last.
All right. So to finish off with a blast, I hope, I want to get back to something that I discussed in 2014. It was also in the European Parliament. It was at the EU wish list, and I was here sitting with a yellow feather in my hair and nail polishment that fits the look and feel of the European Union. And I told the people there that it would be a smart idea to build a digital system, that it would be great to take tasks from one to another subsidiary, and that we could, with artificial intelligence, build on a service-to-service platform where people could exchange their value, and that they could vote online, and that they could participate into projects that are being set from local to global or global to local. All sorts of variables that actually was addressed back then. We're now 11 years later. There's still nothing happening there, which is fine. But then I wonder, like, we're now in a completely different environment where the world is overwhelmed with digitalism. We're all being glued to our phone and being smacked to the television as you have to follow the television. So that hypnotic effect also has a lot of danger for mental health. And I want to emphasize that again, that there's a danger in obliging people to use digitalism and digital systems. The cancel culture, the blocking of people, even banishing people from certain platforms because they don't apply to certain legislation. I understand that. It's, of course, justice and it's important. Yet, where are those who are not choosing to go on this digital platform? And I definitely emphasize on open source code, please, because there's nothing as terrible as an algorithm that discriminates even more. And refusing to see that, to to actually say that some people have access and other people do not have access to visa or golden specials that are created in countries is really what is causing this bad brand image to institutions overall. So, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In the petition on civic artificial intelligence, we mentioned the need of open source systems, but we didn't have time to go in deep with that, but I totally agree. Un minuto, Gabriele.
Question about the humans groups, and it's about the. I want to ask, what's your idea of the criteria needed for the territorial nature of the human groups? Like, because it could like happen that there are gonna be some subscribers in an entire region, and there may be, I don't know, for example, be a group called Humans Lazio, for example, or like what are your like guidelines on this kind of criteria?
No, ne dobbiamo discutere. Nella mia idea sono semplicemente.
We have to discuss about that. In my opinion, what I see is people who want to work together rather than people who represent a given area, a given territory, Latium, a region of Italy, a city, anywhere. What I envisage is groups of people who are interested in working on one topic or one neighborhood in a city. It's now almost the end. We don't have the time to go into the details. Before we close, I'd like to ask the members, the human members who can formally vote on the motion. And if other people subscribe and pay their membership fee, they'll be able to vote too in the future. So I'm now asking the Humans members to stay and to vote by raising their hands on the statute, on the balance sheet and the budget. And the reason we are voting in this way is not that we want to skip the rules of internal democracy. We wanted to have an open debate with everyone. And we are looking forward to having a democratic discussion among our members. So we'll be raising our hands to vote openly on the statutes and on the accounts, and will also be given ballots for a secret vote on myself and Lorenzo Mineo. 4 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for listening to us all day. Thank you. We hope we didn't make their job too difficult, but it was a pleasure. Same for us. And I'd also like to thank all the people who are behind the scenes and who made it possible to organize this complicated event. The Parliament, the assistants to the MEPs who played host to our meeting. They did all the red tape for us to have the badges and the permission to access, and the MEPs, Annalisa Corrado, Valentina Palmisano, Benedetta Scuderi. We'd like to thank them and their assistants. We'd like to thank Ania Grillo and Giacomo Giordano, Alice Spaccini for doing a lot of organizational work, and Lorenzo too, but Lorenzo has been appreciated before. Giacomo, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your Giacomo Canossa. Who's Giacomo Giordano? Whom did I thank? Whom did I thank? I don't know. Giacomo Canossa. And if there are no other comments or questions, you can stay. We'll be voting quickly, but those who really have to stay are the human members, those who are officially members. The others can either stay or very quietly leave the room. And raise your hands, those of you who are Humans members and who are still here. Well, I can see that your survival rate is quite high. That's good. Are there any questions before we vote on the documents? Are there any doubts about what we are going to vote on? Andrea Salimbeni is now shyly moving up, not quite shyly, but all right, you have to refresh your device in order to see the files. One of the amendments to the statute is changing from double presidency to presidency and treasury office. Of course, the new members can't wait to vote, and I can imagine that they're after power within the organization, but those who have just become members cannot vote yet. The others and the non-members cannot. Who's voting against the amendment to the statute? A few dissenting voices. Abstentions? 1 abstention. 2. 3 abstentions. So the motion has been approved. Who is in favor who's approving the accounts, the balance sheet and the budget? And who is against? And who's abstaining? You're abstaining because you don't want to be involved in the legal consequences of approving a balance sheet and budget. Okay, so greater number of abstentions. Amendments to the statute, the new statute. We had a meeting on this, so we're not improvising this vote. Who's in favor of the new statute? Who's against? Abstentions? 1, 2, 3. Mineo wants more abstentions. Or maybe someone would like to shift from a favorable vote to an abstention, so the balance sheet and the budget are approved. I thank you for this. I think this shows your trust towards us as organizers of this Congress. And now there's one candidate as president, one candidate as a treasurer. There are ballots that Alice can give you. And after counting the ballots, we'll be proclaiming the winners, the elected the elected president and treasurer. And so we are now opening the vote on the President and on the Treasurer. And for those of you who are about to leave, again, I'd like to thank you for being here, for participating, and please remember that you're all welcome tomorrow at the ULB, the Université Libre de Bruxelles, where we'll have the Citizens' Assembly. And on Saturday morning, the people who have been chosen by sortition will be voting on the proposals. The address for tomorrow is Université Libre de Bruxelles, Building 4S, entrance number 4, Avenue Jeanne. So Building S, entrance number 4, and everything is on your email or on the Eumans website. And so now we thank you, and we'll see you soon for those who are staying.
Domani dalle ore 8. Dalle ore 8 vi aspettiamo. No, scusate, stamattina era alle ore 8. Sono
le 7, domani le 7.
So this morning we met at 8, but tomorrow it's from 9:15 onward. So we can go to a disco tonight. We'll be waiting for you at 9:15, from 9:15 onward.